The following tutorial will be doing day 2, step 1, which we will be adding the dots to the game. After we are finished, we should be able to add actual physical circular dots into the map, and this will allow for the character to walk over and pick them up, and thus add up eventually, which we will add functionality to that later. We'll be creating 3 classes. We have Dots Inventory Manager, which will extend from Inventory Manager. Dots Pickup Inventory, which extends from Pickup Factory, and Dots INV, which will extend from Inventory. We will also be making a few changes to the Pawn class as well. So start off by going into your development folder like normal, and we will create these 3 files: .inventorymanager.uc, .pickupinventory.uc, and .inv.uc. We'll start off with .inventory manager. It's simple. You just want to put in class.inventory manager, which will extend from inventory manager. Then we will also go ahead and create .pickup inventory, and we'll just start off by putting in class.pickup inventory extends pickup factory, and save that. And we'll come back to this later. And then also we'll have class .inv, which will extend from inventory, and we will also come back to this later. Now, let's go ahead and go inside of dpawn, and we're just going to do a few things. We're going to add always load on client and always load on server to true inside the skeletal mesh component. This isn't actually necessary for what we're doing, but it's just good to have in there. And this will just allow it to load on the proper client. So it will load on the client server, it'll load on the server, so everything will run right. And then also down towards the bottom of dpawn, we're going to add b can pickup inventory equals true, and this will be allowing us, just in case if it isn't already set to true, the ability to pick up inventory. And then our inventory manager class, which will be dots inventory manager. And once we have that done, we can go ahead and save dpawn, and we'll go back into pickup inventory. Pickup inventory is going to spawn a pickup factory, which will allow us to create something, in this case a dot, and it'll allow the player to be able to make collision with it, and upon collision they will pick it up. So basically once they walk into it, the dot is then owned by the player. So what we will start off by doing is we are going to be creating a few things inside default properties for the visual reasons, and we'll need to create a dynamic light environment component for starters. We'll call that .light, and this will, like as before, if we need to make certain changes to the dynamic light environment, we can do so through .light. And inside default properties, then we're going to remove all the sprites, and these are really just more or less things for the engine. So when we go inside the engine and we place a dot factory inside of this engine, we don't get some strange sprite picture that might reflect to something else, such as a pickup factory or a navigation node or something like that, or an arrow for that matter. So we want to make sure we get rid of all that. So let's go ahead and remove those. So we're going to remove a sprite, sprite 2, and arrow, and we're going to remove the good sprite and the bad sprite and put those to none. Now we'll go inside of down a little bit further, and we're going to create our own sprite component, and it'll be begin object class sprite component named .sprite, and the sprite we'll be using, which will be part of the dots package content, is a dot sprite, and all that really is just a yellow circle. We want to make hidden game equal true so that it doesn't show up in the game, and we don't want it to load on the client or server, since this is really more or less just for the editor. We'll end the object and we'll add it. And then we'll come down to begin object, and we're going to make our dynamic light environment now. And b cast shadows equals false, because we don't really want this to cast shadows. We just want this to be a floating sphere that'll be out there for the player to walk into. And as normal, we're going to go ahead and use the dot light that we created above and make it equal dot light's environment, and we'll add the component. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make the static mesh for this dot. So we have something to actually see. So we'll begin the object, we'll put static mesh component, and we'll call it dot pickup. And we want these certain things in here. We don't want to block actors. We don't want to collide with actors. We want it to always load on the server and the client, of course, and we want to accept light, but we don't want to cast shadows. So we'll go ahead and put those in there. Then we'll make light environment equal dots light env, and then the static mesh will equal dots content pack dot static meshes dot dot, which will come with the dots content pack that is available for download. And then we're going to add a scale 3D, and this is in case if we need to scale the object later. And we'll end the object. We'll make pickup mesh equal dot pickup. Pickup mesh is a primitive component that's used within the pickup factory, so we want to make sure that's put in there. If it isn't, when our character walks over to a dot, it actually won't make the dot disappear. You'll touch it, it'll add it, but it won't actually make it go away. And then we're going to do components.add.pickup. The last thing we'll need to do is add just a collision component to it, so that we can make collision. And we'll just go ahead and set the radius to 10, the height to 5. We may adjust these later. We'll make collide actors true, we'll end it, and that will be it. And finally, the last thing we'll do is we're going to make an inventory type for this dot pickup inventory. We're basically saying this is the inventory that we're going to be using for that's going to be created through this dot pickup, and that'll be the inventory type, and we'll do dots dot dots inv. Now once that's finished, we can save that and go into dots inv, and inside dots inv we're going to make one overload function of deny pickup query, and we're just going to return false. This will allow us to pick up multiple dots. If we didn't do this, we'd be stuck with picking up one, and then it wouldn't allow us to pick up the same dot again. So this will allow us to do that. We can go ahead and save that. Now once all that's finished, we can then compile in front end, and what you'll want to do is I've created a new map now, and the new map is called test map 2, I believe. But we're going to load up the editor, and I'm just going to pause while this loads. Okay, now that the editor has loaded, I'm going to go ahead and click on the open existing maps, and it's test map 2. And at this point I've created my own material and my own terrain, so we have something to look at that's a little bit better than before. And also, as you can see, that yellow dot right there is one of the pickup inventory or pickup factories that we've just created for the dot pickup ability. So the way you can add this to a map, if you don't know already, is you go into your content browser and into the actor classes, and you go down to navigational point and into pickup factory, and then we go to dot pickup inventory. We click that, so to select it. We can close out of there, and then we can just go anywhere in the level and just right click on the ground and click add dot pickup inventory here. And what that'll do is that'll add our dots throughout the map. We can do that pretty much in a few other places if you want. So we have some on kind of different areas of the map. And once that's done, you're going to want to rebuild the paths since these are navigational points. So what I'll go ahead and do is do that now. So we'll go to build and then build all. And I will pause while that runs through. Okay, and now that that's done, we can actually click on the play in here viewport, and that'll drop our little guy from the sky. And as we walk over, you can see a dot there. Once we get up to the collision moment, it'll hit, and it'll say snagged an item, and we just walk over and grab a bunch of them. And he can run through this little teeny maze, if you want to call it that, and try to find these dots that we've placed throughout here. And once he picks them all up, that's pretty much the extent at this point for this step. The next step that we will be doing will be adding a HUD, which we will be showing how many of these we've picked up. And then we will also be further into this, we'll be creating the game itself, just a default game to get started, where he can run around and pick up the dots, and once he picks up so many, it'll end the game. Now what we'll do is we'll close out of here. We'll save this first, close out, and we want to change this now. Since we have our new map version, we want to go back to our shortcut that we've created and right click on it and choose properties, And you want to change test map to test map 2 now and click OK. And that way now when we run our game, we're actually running the new map, which is a little bit easier to look at, not so hard on the eyes, and has our dots that we can run around and pick up. And that completes the first step of day 2.